Hi, this is Eileen and Debbie, and we're going to show you how to use Pear Deck on your Google Slides. So Debbie's going to get us started with at peardeck.com. Go ahead, Debbie.
Good morning, everyone. This is Debbie Venugopal. So on Pear Deck, you are looking at the screen that says peardeck.com. This is where you would be starting. On the peardeck.com screen, you would click on Teacher Login. When you click on Teacher Login, you might get a prompt asking if you want an individual account or a district account. If that happens, you are going to click on Individual Account. If that doesn't happen, then you're going to go ahead and log in with your school ID. So it's a login with Google. You would choose your school account. And once you're logged in, you would see your login ID with your email up on the top right. This will then bring you to the premium version of Pear Deck. Next to your profile, you would see a drop-down arrow, and that is where it tells you you are on a Pear Deck. If you click on My Account, what you will see are a bunch of settings that you can use. So it'll start off with your plan, and if you see some kind of expiration date on the plan, that's just because we have it till the end of the school year. Don't worry about that. You move on to settings. And under settings, there are a number of features that premium version of Pear Deck gives us. It starts off with Classroom Climate. What Classroom Climate does is it checks the mood or the feedback that students can give you before or after the lesson. So what you would do is if the switch is toggled on, you can click the drop-down menu, there's mood and feedback, and you can decide if you want both of those for the beginning and end of the lesson, or if you just want to gauge the mood of your students or feedback only. The next thing you would be looking at is Immersive Reader. Again, you can toggle this on or off. It reads out certain parts of the slide to your student. You've got Google Classroom integration with Google Classroom, where you can easily assign your Pear Deck to your Google Classroom. You can leave that on. Takeaways is the next feature, and that is feedback that gives the student information on how they did their work. And that goes into your Google Drive, and it can also populate the assignment for students as their feedback. And finally, you have required student login. You want to keep that on, and you want to keep it on Google, because without that, students would be logging in with either an avatar or a nickname, which we do not want happening. We want them to be able to log in with their school ID. So this is a very quick overview of some of the features that are in Pear Deck right now for the premium version. Eileen?
Okay, so now I'm going to show you starting at Google Slides. You would open your Google Slides, and you can either use an existing lesson that you have, or you could start a new one. Once you've opened your Google Slides, you're going to click on Add-ons at the top. And then you're going to click on Get Add-ons. I already have Pear Deck on mine, but for the first time, you're going to click on Get Add-ons. And Pear Deck should be the second one up there, but if it's not, you can just search up here on the apps for Pear Deck. So you would add that one on, and then you would open up Pear Deck for Google Slides and open Pear Deck. Once you open it up, you'll see that the menu appears over on the right. One of the options that you have in Pear Deck is a template library. So if we're going to open that, and you'll see in there, they have some lesson builders. They have beginning of lesson, during the lesson, and end of lesson. And just take a look at what some of these are. They have a text slide. As you come in and get started, you can follow these instructions. Let's just click on this one for an example. So it added a new slide and it used one of these templates. So it's called a bell ringer. As you come in and get settled, follow these instructions. Now you can take one of these templates and you can change the wording in any of these and you can make it your own. So this is a text slide, which means that the students would be writing in their response as a text. So those are some of the beginning lessons that you could use. There's a draggable one to see how the homework assignment was. Let's take a look at that one. So all the students would do is drag the icon to see how the homework assignment was, whether they gave it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So that's some of the lesson builders that are in there that you can use. Under learning development, they have some critical thinking slides and social emotional learning slides. Just take a quick look at that. So these templates are there if you want to use them. And then under the subject areas, they have different ones, example questions, ideas for content area. So you can look through those and see if any of those you like. They also have grades K through 2, math, science, social studies, world languages, and ELA. Now Debbie is going to show us, I'm going to back out of the template library, and Debbie is going to show us how you can add these questions onto an existing slide that you have. Debbie?
Thank you, Eileen. So let's move back to slide number 1, and we have a map of the United States on slide number 1. The section that says, ask students a question. There are 6 different types of questions you can ask a student. You can ask a question. So having put the map of United States on your slide, you could ask them to answer a text question, something like, what is the capital? So you would click on the text question. Pear Deck would convert it to a text-based question, which will give the students a response box where they can type in their response. You could add a text box on this slide by clicking the letter T up on the top and add a text box on the slide asking your question to the students. And Pear Deck would give them the answer box for that. You could also make this a multiple choice question by going to the choice section. So when you click on that, Pear Deck takes a second and converts the response to a multiple choice format for the students. So again, when you see this pop-up screen, it gives you a little information on how you would be inserting your answer choices. So your question, for example, could be, what is the capital of Massachusetts? And your answers could be Boston, New York, Chicago. All right, and you would click Update Slide, and what would happen is those 3 choices would show up as options for students when they are on their student interface. So if you look at the bottom of the slide that Eileen has, it tells you that this is a Pear Deck multiple choice slide. Your current options are, and it would tell you what are the 3 options you typed for choices. And of course, again, your question would be in a text box on the slide, just like a regular Google slide where you would put a text box. The next type of question you can ask is a number question. And when you click on the number question, that would be where your students would give you a number as a response. The number can be a whole number or a decimal number. It cannot be fractions. So for example, if you were posting a question on the slide and asking, what is the population of Massachusetts? In the number box, the students could respond and tell you the number of people living in Massachusetts. So that would be the way you could use a number tool or the number feature on a slide. The next feature is a website. So the website tool allows you to link a website onto your slide. So once you have a website, for example, a mass.gov website, if you wanted to use that, you could link that website or a website about United States. You could put the link in there, the URL in there, and update your slide. And the link will then go on your slide, and the students can click on that link to look for information or to answer a question that you would have posed on your slide. Again, with a regular text box, just like we do on a Google slide. The next question that you can ask students is to draw. So the drawing tool, what it does is it sets up a bunch of different colors that the students can choose from, and it gives them a writing tool or a drawing tool that they will see on their student interface. They can pick the color they want, and they pick the pen or the highlighter tool that they want, and they can highlight or draw on this slide. So if you were going to ask them to color Massachusetts blue, color Maine green, color Florida yellow, they could use the tool to do the coloring or the drawing or anything else that you're asking them to draw on the slide. And then finally, you have the draggable. The draggable tool is just like what Eileen showed you on her slide number 3, where students can drag an icon to the location you're asking them. And for the draggables, you've got choices. You can have dots or you can have flags. You have different shapes that you can use. There are other things under draggables. There is math symbols. There are numbers. So you can use math symbols, of course. There's numbers. There's also little icons of people or animals. And then finally, there are other punctuation and other symbols that you can use, special character symbols that you can use if you want the students to drag it. Now, each of these draggables can be dragged on your slide to the location that you're asking the student to drag it. And it's not just one draggable per slide. You can have per slide. So the first one could be a dot. The next one could be a flag if you wanted that, or a little icon, a math symbol. So it could be anything that you choose, and you can keep adding your draggables. And once you've added all your draggables, then your student can drag those on the slide to the location that you're asking them. So for example, if you were asking them to add the draggable, after you click Update Slide, if you were going to ask them to drag one of those icons to the dot, for example, could be dragged to Massachusetts. The flag could be dragged to California. And that again would be instructions you would give them on your slide, and the students would perform the instructions that you are giving them. So those are the 6 different kinds of questions you can set up on a slide that you are building for interactive responses from your students. Eileen?
Yes. And also you can have you can add audio to your slide. So if you wanted to read the directions to your student, you could just click on Add Audio to Slide. And then you can record your voice. So you could record the directions in case your students can't read them. So that's another way to make your slides more engageable for your students. Okay, so now once you have your slideshows all set, now you want to assign it in your Google Classroom. So the first thing you're going to do is click Start Lesson. And you're going to pick Student Paced Activity. And it gives you some information about the teacher dashboard of what you can see on there. So I say, got it. And at this point, I can share to my Google Classroom right from here. So I'm going to click Share to Classroom. And you can choose which classroom that you have. So I'm going to assign it to this classroom. I'm going to choose an action. I'm going to create an assignment. And I'm going to hit go. And I'll give it a title. And this is just like when you're in your Google Classroom and you're creating an assignment. And I'll put it under my topic that I want. And I'll assign it. And from here, you can view your Google Classroom. And there's the assignment that I just put in today. And you can refer back to the previous video to see how a student views the assignment. Okay, Debbie, do you want to talk about the takeaways that happen
Yes.
after a student does a slideshow?
Yes, thank you, Eileen. So the final step after you have assigned the work in your Google Classroom, your student can click on the link and they will do the work from the beginning to the end. And for that, you can refer to Eileen's previous video on the student interface of how they work on the Pear Deck slides. And once the students are done, what happens is you get a folder in your drive, and Pear Deck will automatically put a Pear Deck folder in your drive after the first time you've used it. And it'll be called Pear Deck, just like you see on the screen right now. And within the Pear Deck folders will be a subfolder called Takeaways. And the takeaways are actually the student responses. Now, the way Pear Deck works is once the students have taken the assignment and done it, Pear Deck converts those slides into Google Docs and makes a copy for each student that will go into a folder with the name of the session that you just conducted with the students. So it will be a few subfolders down, but you will find the folder there based on the lesson that you just did with your students. And within that folder, you will find a blank copy of the Pear Deck questions. And the blank copy is in case you want to send a blank copy to a student who did not do the assignment in the classroom, you can share the blank copy with that student if they want to write the answers in or type the answers in into a Google Doc. But most of the time, what you want to do is take a look at the individual copies that you get from each student. So this is a copy of a lesson called Copy of Magnetic Letters that was assigned in a Google Classroom, and they were different questions being asked. And this is a Google Doc for this particular student who is known as McCarthy Lab. And you will find that on the left side is the actual question, and on the right side is the response from the student. You will also notice that this was a slide that had an audio recording on it. So the little gray box that you see was the audio recording. And as you scroll down, you will find other answers that the student has either used the pen tool to write, some of them being obviously wrong, and the teacher can give responses to the students by using the comment box. So this now will enable the student to get individual responses from the teacher. And each and every slide that you had will be a separate page on the Google Doc. So this is how you get to see the takeaways in your My Drive. Now, when you finish a session, when the session has ended, you can go back and publish the takeaways. And we're going to talk about that right now. So once the assignment is done and the due date for the assignment is over, you would come back to your slide, open up Pear Deck, and go to the 3 lines right next to the start lesson. And once you click on that, if you look further down, you are going to see the link that says review sessions. So when you click on the review sessions, it will come up with all the sessions you have conducted. And at that point, you can stop the session. So if you look at today's session, it says today at 11:08 a.m. It's a student-paced session. You can go to the 3 dots and you can end the session. Once you click end session, that session is now no longer available for students to respond to. At that point, you can click on takeaways. And once you click on takeaway,
Yeah, we should have mentioned that we wanted to end the session before we went to look at the takeaways, because you do have to end the session before you get your takeaways.
yes. So technically, the order of doing work would be you making the slides, you assigning it in your Google Classroom, students work on it. When the due date is done, you would come and end the session. And once you end the session, then you get to this point where it'll say publish takeaways for this session. And that is how you publish the takeaway for the session. And once you publish the takeaway for the session, that's when the takeaway shows up in your drive. You also, at this point, get an option to share it to your Google Classroom. And you can go ahead and click share to your Google Classroom, and it would do the same thing. It would set it up in your Google Classroom as feedback for the students. So you can go in, you can choose the same class again. You can probably make it a material for students to look at, and each individual student will get just their response. They do not get the responses from the entire class. So this is also why it's important that the students log in with their Google names and not an avatar or a nickname. We want to make sure they get the correct documents back. So at this point, you would choose the Google Classroom. You would assign the takeaways to the Google Classroom. The students get it, and you will have a copy in your drive. You can go back and add your comments on those Google documents. And of course, the students would see those comments as you make them. So that is a quick overview of Pear Deck, starting with your making the slides, converting it to a Pear Deck slide, assigning it in your Google Classroom, coming back here to end the session, publish the takeaways, giving a copy as a feedback to students in the Google Classroom, and you being able to go to your drive to give them individual feedbacks on their Google Docs, that is responses from the Google Slides. Eileen?
Yes, so I hope this was helpful for you. If you want to give Pear Deck a try it out. And if you have any questions, of course, as always, you can ask us for help on that. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.